Right, so Keir Starmer's had another relaunch. It's his latest attempt to try and convince us to like him again, having failed on the previous 10 occasions he's done this. It's time he took the hint, really, isn't it, Sunshine? But just as he's done on several occasions before, it has been accompanied by another list of things he apparently stands for. But having lied over everything he has claimed to stand for previously, there's no reason to expect him to stick to his latest claim, surely. For Labour members, both current and former, it began with that list of 10 pledges that he claimed to stand for when running to be Labour leader. Here's that list. You can pause the video and go through these to see how often he's broken them. I'll pick out social justice for one, when he won't now abolish the failed misery of universal credit. There's strengthening trade unions there as well, when he won't stand on a picket line now he's leader. He did before, or promoting peace and human rights when he's an unconditional supporter of apartheid Israel and was being funded by the Israel lobby whilst he was running. He now claims in his latest relaunch he wasn't even elected on these, but because people wanted a Labour government. Bit of a swipe at his then rivals there then. Anyway, after he ditched these once elected leader, he's blaming the Ukraine war for breaking a lot of these, incidentally, as well, despite ditching most of them before the war even broke out there. Liar that he is. He replaced those 10 pledges with 10 principles. 10 principles for power, he called them. No sign of the economic justice, common ownership, equality, or pledges to defend migrant rights here. This was September of 2021. He was pursuing Tory votes now. He'd gotten what he needed out of the rotten lefties and was busily seeing them purged at this point, you see. Here's the 10 principles set out again. Feel free to pause and see how many of these he's busted since, or even laugh at the meaninglessness of some of them, rewarded for playing by the rules, for instance. But some show the beginnings of his true colours. Government to be a partner to private enterprise, for instance. Still vague, of course, but his embracing of privatisation, when that's the Tories' job, can be read in that line. Then there was his 3-point contract with the British people: security, prosperity and respect. We yawned at the lack of detail attached again. Then came his 5 principles of economic growth. These are spectacularly banal. Financial responsibility, distinctly British, replete with flags sticking out of posterior, as usual, no doubt. In partnership with business, again, the pro-privatisation language, energise communities and refocus investment. None of those, not one, explains how economic growth would be achieved under that. They are all just meaningless sound bites. And then there was his 3 principles for the economy as well: strong, secure and fair. This is just some of the relaunch gump he's offloaded onto us. But each time there was no detail, no honesty. It became rapidly clear that every time Starmer tries to resell himself over and over to the public, we become less and less interested by what is on offer. It begs to question why Starmer felt the need to do this. But perhaps Team Keith are self-aware enough to know they are in the position they are in to win the next election with a 22-point poll lead because the Tories are losing and not because Labour is winning. And so we come to his latest list of 5 selling points. Gone are pledges, promises and principles, and in are Starmer's 5 missions. Thank God he's found a new word. Sadly, what he hasn't found is anything more than vacant sentences, though there's a promise of more detail to come. Yeah, we've heard that before. And Starmer promises are worth about as much as Boris Johnson's, a man he's apparently loathes now, he's said. Is that because you're too much alike in the honesty stakes, though? So, his 5 missions. They are: achieve the highest sustained growth in the G7, build an NHS fit for the future, make Britain's streets safe, break down barriers to every opportunity at every stage for every child, and make Britain a clean energy superpower. How then? How are you doing any of this? And why should we believe you anyway? He's getting pulled up on the trust issue, but so far has avoided answering it by deflecting to these missions. They give him a cover. They give him a scapegoat. And unless journalists start pressing him on this hard, he's going to avoid the issue of his repeated lying over and over again. Aside from that, there's every reason in the actions Starmer has committed in the last 3 years that he's been Labour leader to shred these missions already before we even get to the detail. Achieve the highest growth in the G7. We're currently bottom of the G7 countries economically, where other countries have bounced back from the pandemic economic hit. We've been slowest of all, narrowly avoiding a recession to top it all off. And the only additional factor to concern ourselves with on that, though our handling of the pandemic was amongst the worst in the world in and of itself, has been the mishandling of Brexit. Starmer has said he's determined to make Brexit work. Again, he hasn't told us how. To boost economic growth, the financial and manufacturing and import and export issues we're still experiencing as the hard Brexiteers on the Tory backbenches paralyse the country by blocking any progress on this, by providing a barrier to reality, have to be overcome. How would Starmer do that? And do that successfully enough to leave the rest of the G7 behind? It's nonsense. He, the great Remainer, the guy who took down Corbyn by undermining his Brexit position of giving the Tories enough rope to hang themselves with, now wants to make it work and has said as much since becoming leader, never really believing in Remain anyway, just believing in whatever advances his own ambitions. But it's ambition without talent, without honesty and integrity, and without any political know-how himself. Build an NHS fit for the future. Massive recruitment crisis, and Labour's answer is to train more here. Great. That takes years. What do you do in the meantime? Get people back from overseas who have supported our NHS for decades? No. Let's get the private sector in instead. Newsflash, they haven't got the capacity, and it's economically stupid, so it won't help with your first mission. The private sector costs more. We know Starmer and his health minion Wes Streeting have received numerous private health donations, so the truth behind this mission is he's bought and paid for, and therefore it will fail. He's had the temerity to stand up and blame the invasion of Ukraine for going back on his word regarding NHS outsourcing, and his sycophantic frontbenchers just nodded along to that. If you believe this, please explain to me how a war in another country has affected our ability to run our health service. Make Britain's streets safe. How? By locking up protesters or noisy trade unionists? You seem to like what the Tories did there. More police powers in the hands of an authoritarian like Starmer, after his history of interference against due judicial process as Director of Public Prosecutions. His determination to see Julian Assange prosecuted and deported to Sweden and then likely onto the US is well known and well documented. You can put more police on the streets, but personally, I fear how he'd use them as Prime Minister. If you aren't paying attention to his dictatorial tendencies within the Labour Party, you're going to be in for a shock if he ever becomes Prime Minister. Break down barriers for every child. Here we go. Too much talking about how he's the son of a toolmaker and a nurse again, no doubt. But we have a massive issue with teacher retention and recruitment. And even as they are preparing to take strike action again, you'll not be out there offering support, nor are you offering details or solutions. Crack down on private school funding and their charitable status, perhaps. Depends how many of their mummies and daddies become donors, because sucking up to the rich whilst flipping the bird to your own members, telling them if they don't like what you're offering, they can leave, shows where you prefer your Labour Party's income to come from. And it's not from ordinary working class people, usually via their affiliated trade union dues. And that means you're for sale to anyone with lots of dosh. Therefore showing it really doesn't matter what you say to the public. If they aren't opening their wallets, you don't care if you're conning them or not. And then there's make Britain a green energy superpower. The scope for this is there, with massive potential for wind, tidal and geothermal energy, as we have with our geography. This is possible, but won't happen in any way that benefits us under Starmer. He's already announced the creation of GB Energy, a green energy company, publicly owned, at least until somebody makes him an offer he can't refuse on it, but it won't be an energy supplier. It'll be a generator and distributor to the same energy supply companies already scalping us. His original pledge to renationalise energy is gone in favour of supporting the privatised energy market to carry on as they always have. He might meet this pledge to an extent, likely a very limited extent, but nothing will change for us from where we are now, with these companies still making billions in profits off the backs of all of us. So after all of this, I thought I'd write a new set of pledges for Keir Starmer to admit to declare, because they are at least honest, and it'd be good if he actually admitted them. Number 1, I undermined Jeremy Corbyn. Number 2, I lied to get elected of the Labour Party. Number 3, I suspended Jeremy Corbyn because I'm terrified of him, not because he'd done anything wrong. 4, I ignored, and I'm still ignoring, the findings of the Ford report into Labour abuses and anti-Semitism. If anything, I'm adding a new chapter to it with my purging of left-wing members. 5, I pretended to be a socialist when I'm really a red Tory. 6, I'm very much for sale to the highest bidder. 7, nothing will change with me in charge. 8, truth will always be a rare commodity. 9, authoritarianism is my middle name. Don't call me Rodney. And 10, I'll say whatever I think I need to con you into trusting me. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do hit like and subscribe, leave a comment, and hit the notification bell too so you don't miss the next one. Also, look out for me on other social media and interesting stuff by clicking the Linktree link in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Cheers, folks.